with that, then I guess it's 7 o'clock. So I would like to call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, October 28th. Please all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So, next item, and let me just fix the. Should be. Okay, great. See if that's not working.
That's hurt you.
Well, I think somebody's got, no, I'm saying the view. I don't understand why it does this. I'm just gonna give me 1 second. Go back to gallery for now. Let's see. Oh, this is what speaker is. Okay, still getting there. Did that work? It should zoom in now on the room. I don't understand that. All right, well, anyways, we'll just see Jeannie's box up there. So anyways, I want to welcome everybody. And just a real quick update from my end. Early voting is obviously started last week and is continuing to go through this week. So you can vote through Sunday from 10 till 6. And then on Wednesday, Tuesday, tomorrow, and on Halloween, you can actually vote from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. So we encourage everybody to, the hours are on the website, but to continue to early vote. We've had a very big turnout here in Madison. Every day it's been very busy here in Town Hall, and I want to just thank our registrars and our town clerk for doing a fantastic job of running everybody through with very little waits, considering high volume. So I want to say thank you to all of that. Also want to announce, we were very excited to learn last week that the VFW received a $150,000 grant to renovate their building from the State Bonding Commission. We've been working with the VFW to make improvements to their building and had actually given them some ARPA money previously last year. And so I'm really excited that our state representative Parker and State Senator Cohen did such a fantastic job advocating for the VFW. And last year we learned that they will be getting $150,000 to make improvements to their facility for the State Bonding Commission. Excited to attend today the ribbon cutting at Wellington and Madison, which is our newest affordable housing complex in town, based off of Cottage Road. We got the whole board attended. We had an opportunity to tour the apartments, which are beautiful, and just excited to see that project is on time. We went to the shovel, whatever it was called, a year ago when they started construction, and exciting to see it finally open, and residents will be moving in starting next month. And also just want to highlight, there's going to be a press conference this Friday. The Lieutenant Governor is coming to Madison to recognize a recent award the town received for a connectivity grant for $800,000 for sidewalk and roadway improvements to Scotland Avenue. So that'll be at the library at 11 o'clock this Friday. So we're excited to see that. That is a road that has a lot of pedestrian activity on it. It also connects to our downtown. So now we'll have a whole loop of sidewalks. We just recently completed the sidewalks going up 79, and this creates a network of sidewalks around our downtown area. So we're really excited to see that project launch soon, and that the state is kicking in $800,000 to fund that. And then just also want to remind that we have trunk or treat this Halloween from 4 to 6 on the town green. A great annual tradition that's sponsored by the Chamber and the Madison Police Department. And so we encourage everybody, if you have little kids, particularly, we're going house to house is sometimes challenging. It's a great way to load up on a lot of candy, and a lot of groups come out through donations. It's a fun event. So it's on the green this year. And don't worry about the weather. It's going to be very warm. So don't wear a costume that's too weighty. I will say that. So that is my update. Any liaison reports or selectmen comments?
Go ahead, you can start.
Okay, I just want to give a quick reminder as well as liaison to the senior commission that if there's anybody that needs a ride for voting, you can call the senior center and schedule those rides, and they are participating for both election day and the early voting days as well.
I've got several. So I'm going to start with Madison Youth and Family Services. Is pleased to announce that we are partnering with Madison Senior Services and APK Charities to facilitate a resource fair for Madison veterans. With the help of the assessor's office, we were able to identify a list of approximately 570 veterans in town that have applied for military service exemptions. With this list, we can reach out with an invitation to the fair, along with a short list of local resources. The fair is scheduled for December 4th from 2 to 4 p.m. at the Senior Center. We are grateful for Bob Kaiser and the board of APK Charities for their leadership on this event. We look forward to this opportunity to provide some vital outreach to Madison veterans. And then with relation to the Board of Ed, I think you probably have all heard, hopefully all of you have heard as well, the Blue Ribbon Award that our Daniel Hand High School received, which is a huge honor. So our superintendent and TJ Salutary, who's the principal of Daniel Hand, will be down at a national recognition in DC next month. The Board of Selectmen will be receiving invites to a celebration at 7 p.m. on 11/12. So just keep that in mind. Yep. They're excited about the progress on the new school construction. It continues to be on time. District is preparing for the next reorganization, next year. The Board of Ed received a recognition as a board of distinction from the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, which is CABE, and will be recognized at CABE's annual conference in November. And if you're not paying attention, our Daniel Hand football team is undefeated. And other fall sports teams as well are preparing for postseason play. So pretty exciting things that are going on in our schools. That is it. End of report. That's what they say.
Very formal, formal.
We don't do that.
So interesting is when the delegation goes to Washington, the superintendent and TJ, it's the Friday after election day. So that'll be interesting. I just think it'll be interesting to hear what their experience is like, but very exciting for them, obviously. And we're excited to celebrate. What a great accomplishment.
Only one in the state of Connecticut.
Yeah.
Only high school.
Yeah, the only high school.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Any other liaison reports?
No selectmen's meeting would be complete without me giving an update on the Academy Building Committee. I wanted to update you on the schedule. The bid packages were approved by the committee this afternoon. The meeting was called a page turner, not a barn burner, but a page turner, in which the committee members went through a 200-page document. That's going out to the proposed bidders November 4th, and we expect that the townspeople and the selectmen will have those bids back for our review probably the second week in December.
Right.
Okay, so I'll start with a bit of a PSA. At this time of year, school is in full swing, and I want to remind everybody that school buses are not things to beat at stoplights, at stop signs, and certainly not when the flashing lights are going. Unfortunately, we had a very minor, no injury interaction between a car and a bus on Route 79, where a car tried to beat a bus by running a stop sign. As you would imagine, a 30,000-pound bus has trouble stopping quickly, and the bus struck the car again. Nobody was hurt. But everybody just needs to remember to take their time. And if you have children driving to high school, please take a moment to remind them that the yellow lights on the bus are the signal to stop. It is not a race to beat the bus before it can put on its red lights, because the age of the children that may be crossing the street that we try to train them to not cross the street until they get a clear signal from the driver. But children being children, they see the bus, they may step out into traffic. So please, it happens with some frequency in Madison, that cars run the yellow and red lights on buses. So if you have a high schooler driving, or if you're driving, it's okay to be a few minutes late. It's okay to get stuck behind a bus for a little while. It's just a bad day for everybody when an accident like that happens.
I
So,
saw on the national news, actually, there were a whole story about the issues with racing a bus. It's scary stuff. Yeah.
so, thankfully, Madison does not have accidents very frequently, but we did have one on Friday, so there's that.
Yeah.
A housekeeping thing, I think item F in the consent agenda was probably in the original regular agenda and got moved. It's in there for discuss and take action. So unless you expect that we're gonna take that, I just set the expectation for everybody that we're gonna vote on those as a block. We're not going to pick apart.
Yeah, no, because I think we agreed last time if it was a contract that was relating to a CIP project that was funded, that we were gonna put it in the consent agenda.
Right.
Right,
So
okay.
I would
Yeah,
imagine
you're
this
just saying the
probably,
language needs to change,
this,
yeah.
this was
Yeah.
in the agenda and then
Yeah.
caught and moved into the consent agenda
Right. It
as it
was,
should
yeah.
have been.
Yeah.
But the
So
discuss
it would
part,
be just,
it's just, we're just following through on the things that the taxpayers have already voted on and approved. We're just giving that formal approval as we're required to do. And lastly, a bit of housekeeping for the board. We have a couple of items on the agenda that we didn't receive any material on in advance. And I'd like to renew my request that anything that's on the agenda, we could please get the materials, even if it's an executive summary of what we're going to be discussing. Would be very helpful so that we can all come prepared to the meetings.
The presentations you're talking about?
There's some presentations, there's some updates, there's some discussion items. Item 7, item 9, and item 11. On all the other ones, we did get material.
Nothing we're acting on. is it?
yeah, I mean,
No.
typically, if we're gonna be voting, there's always materials to review before voting, but I guess sometimes it's just a discussion or an update, and then
Right, but it still would be.
it's
nice
helpful, and we
to-
always try to provide it if we have it, but I hear you, Bruce. We just didn't have the materials by Friday in the packet, so. But understood.
That's it.
Any others? No, we're good. All right. Well, with that, then I'll open up to citizens' comments, and I just mentioned that we do have a lengthy meeting tonight, so we welcome citizens' comments, and just if you could keep them brief, limited to 2 minutes, that would be great. Any comments from citizens today? Just raise your hand and state your name and address. And there's an opportunity at the end of the meeting as well. So, no one here? Anybody online? Hands raised online? No? Okay. All right, great. All right, well, we'll move on then. So I would like to make a motion and amend the consent agenda as presented to amend item F to say to approve a recommendation from the facilities department. And approve all other items in the consent agenda as written. So moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Motion passes. Okay, item number 7. And I will say I did not tell the library to prepare something formal, so they may have something formal, so that's why there's nothing in the packet from them. But I want to welcome up the library director and some board members I think are here. If you'd like to come up and I think the idea here was to provide an update of how the library is doing. Obviously, there had been some concerns with the recent news headline, that was in the source that talked about budget issues. And I think there was a little bit of information that wasn't necessarily clear in that article. And I thought it'd be good for the library to talk about that, where they are today, how they're doing. And then it's a good kind of starter for budget discussions as we enter into the next fiscal year. So do you have any kind of formal, so we'll welcome you up here, and it might be better to stand over there. I think the camera comes from there.
Yeah, the camera's there, so.
Yeah. So you can do the podium or just talk there,
If you want.
I'll be glad to
Yeah, if you
stand
need,
at the podium.
Of course, it looks like the camera goes where the camera.
Thank you, Board of Selectmen, for putting this on the agenda this evening. I would like to address the article published on October 1st, 2024 on the source regarding the financial situation of the E.C. Scranton Memorial Library. By the way, I'm J. Keith Luckenbach. I am president of the Board of Trustees at the E.C. Scranton Memorial Library. The article states that the library might close due to a $462,000 shortfall in the operational budget. However, this information is misleading and risks causing undue alarm in our community. The library is indeed facing a financial challenge with a $462,000 fundraising goal to supplement its operational budget. However, I cannot emphasize enough that this situation is not unique. The implication that the library will imminently close its doors if this goal isn't immediately met misrepresents the situation, since the library always has to raise money in order to meet its annual operating budget. The library's leadership and staff are fully committed to maintaining services to the community. Active fundraising efforts, including events, donor research, and outreach and partnerships, are underway to address this budgetary need without, and I emphasize without, resorting to closure. The E.C. Scranton Memorial Library has long been a pillar of our community, providing vital resources and programs. As always, I encourage residents to support the library's fundraising efforts, not out of fear of closure, but out of recognition of the library's positive impact on our community. With community engagement, we are confident in our ability to reach our fundraising goals and keep this essential institution operating effectively. As always, we thank the town of Madison for its continued support of the E.C. Scranton Memorial Library. And I thank the Board of Selectmen for the opportunity to clarify this important matter. I hope this provides a more balanced perspective on the library's current financial status. Thank you.
Thank you for that very strong statements. I think we've heard the message, so we appreciate it.
Hi, everybody. My name is Allison Murphy. I'm the library director at the Scranton Library. It's great to see all of you tonight. And thank you again. I echo Keith's sentiments in that we are incredibly grateful for the support that the town gives us. And also the community gives us. We are just really blessed. I'm going to start off with a little bit of sad news and then I'll move into the happy news. I'm sad to share with you, if you haven't heard, that we lost a beloved staff member earlier this month, Chris Jennings-Penders. Chris was a fixture in Madison, grew up here, lived here his whole life. His family is still here, worked at the library for over 20 years. One of my favorite lines that Chris always said when I worked with him on the circulation desk is people would come up and he'd say, I know you, I don't need your card. And he knew just about almost everybody in this town, and from the littlest children up to senior citizens and beyond. So as a library, we've been grieving this month with the community. I commend our staff because they have been working with the community day to day, just people who come up to them and they're just learning for the first time that Chris passed away, or they just want to share a memory or share their grief. So we had a lovely memorial for Chris on Saturday at the library, and he will always stay in our hearts. On a happier note, in October, we've been doing a lot of outreach as a library. We were at Pride Fest, we were at the Madison Beach Hotel Craft Fair, we were at the Bower Park Fall Fair. We hosted a lovely thank you reception for our Leadership Alliance. Those are the folks who have pledged over the course of 5 years to donate to the library. So we had a thank you event with them that was led by the Katz family, Penny and Alan. Alan is a member of the Antiques Roadshow and gave a delightful talk. The Garden Club of Madison is celebrating their 100th anniversary, and they had their big reception at the library a couple of weeks ago. We had tons and tons of people here, and some of the members of the Garden Club created floral arrangements that complemented the artwork throughout the library. And then last Thursday, we inaugurated the very first poet laureate in Madison, Ed Lent. I've been joking with Peggy that what is she going to do next Thursday night, because we've seen each other for 3 Thursdays in a row now. And thank you, Peggy, for being there and for supporting the library. It's been really fun. We have been busy all of these months working on our next strategic plan. We hope to launch that in a couple of months. We did a survey through the town. We received 761 responses to our townwide survey. We've also had multiple focus groups with all different segments of the community. And we're really working to kind of develop what is our next step going forward and how will we do that over the next 3 to 5 years. Our numbers at the library continue to grow, and I'm really, really excited about that. In fiscal year 23-24, we had over 106,000 visits to the library. We circulated over 194,000 items. We held 1,100 events that were attended by over 24,000 patrons. This is double the attendance from 10 years ago. So really, really excited about that. Our room usage continues also to grow. The rooms were reserved over 2,600 times, and we had over 10,000 patrons use those rooms. So those are rooms from the study rooms to the community rooms, everything in between. And it's, you know, if you come like today, there were kids studying, tutors working with kids, people taking calls, things going on in the children's room, people coming in to see the artwork. It's just a great, buzzing, fun place. And so, as I said, we are super excited for the town of Madison's support, and we hope to continue to grow and be a part of this community. And we love collaborating with everybody in town. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Board members have questions? I know obviously we'll get more into, numbers and budgets when we go through the budgeting cycle, but I thought it was important. Things are fine and we're just staying open, they just want to do better on their fundraising is really what the headline of that is. So any questions from board members?
No, thanks for the update. I appreciate that.
I just want to hear Keith say will not close one more time.
Well, thank you then for coming out tonight. I appreciate it. I think it's important just to reinforce that messaging. I know we had those conversations, but it's great for the public to hear that directly from you. So thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Okay, well, with that, I guess we'll move on to item number 8. And I'll invite Fran Brady up, and I know there's a number of people here that are working with you on this project to talk about a proposed tree ordinance. Fran and a team of people had come in, I guess it was in May or something like that, or April, and to talk about.
February, then May, then August.
Yeah, so, well, started the conversation about tree preservation. I know that we've had a lot of different things over the last year come up in the public, whether it was some of the clear cutting done by Eversource, and then some just development things that had happened where people were not happy with some of the things that had happened to the trees on the property. And so this is kind of bubbled up to how can we do better in our town to try to protect our trees. So appreciate this is a group of residents who have come forth with some ideas. So we're excited to hear kind of the next round of your proposal.
Great. I'm glad to follow the library because one, we were going to participate in that memorial service by giving you a tree. And secondly, I've been trying to get meeting rooms at your library and they're booked all the time. So I've had to go to the senior center. So you're doing a good job. All right. Well, thank you. I'm up here because I'm backed by a lot of strong people that are very passionate about what we're trying to do here. So it's not just Fran Brady, it's actually a big team of experts, of people that know a lot and people that care a lot. So it's a pleasure for me to be part of that. It really is. Over the last few years, we've heard right from this spot here, the first selectwoman, that the number one issue that the people of Madison call into the town office about is trees. Over the last few years, it sometimes seems that other than the lost dogs and the nonprofits trying to move an opening hill, the number one issue talked about on town Facebook sites is
Presidential election.
I'm a little behind time.
Guessing, right?
It's clear cutting.
Was that a song?
It's clear cutting, whether it be from Eversource, subdivisions, or new restaurant projects. Over the past few years, the Plan of Conservation and Development, the POCD, consistently stated that the top priority for the residents of Madison, that they felt that we should be protecting our scenic environment. That was very, one of the top important things on their list. Over 8 months ago, at a special session with the board on tree cutting, I presented our thoughts on how we as a town could take a more proactive and positive approach to managing the tree canopy. An approach built off the experiences of not just our ideas, but of many small towns around Connecticut, around Massachusetts, around New York, and even Madison, New Jersey. So at 2 separate proposal meetings, I shared drafts that contain the best of these practices, and we've gotten good feedback. Before I go any further into the details of the proposal, I want to make something very clear right up front, because I hear it all the time. Our work here was not to create a law that would prevent anyone from ever cutting down a tree. Our goal was, and still is, to find a balanced and least, I don't know if this is proper English, least encumbering approach to preserving both the tree canopy and private property rights. We want to try to do both. It's a challenge, but we want to try to do it. And we made a lot of concessions to get to this point. After more than 9 months of research, discussion, and may I say significant compromise, we wish to submit to the board a draft ordinance modeled after, yet less restrictive than, the city of Hartford. It is one that we believe is fair and balanced and will meet the goal of the state of Connecticut. The state of Connecticut has a goal, has it for a couple of years now, of recognizing and doing something about climate change. And doing something about preserving your tree canopy is one of the most important things we can do to help that cause. And I want to make a point that it will not, it's our hope, and with your help, this ordinance will not add unreasonable new administration burden onto our town staff. It will not add significant cost to our residents, but it will support one of the top desirables of life in this bucolic setting: tree canopy preservation. So, some will say, Fran, are you nuts? We're surrounded by trees. We got thousands of trees. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that we are losing them. And we're losing them at a pace that's getting quicker because of climate change, more severe storms, extended droughts, not to mention the havoc these pesky invasive bugs. In fact, I killed my first 5 spotted lanternflies. I hope you don't ever see them here. I killed my first 5 in Fairfield doing a hike. So they're here. An ongoing study by a collaborative group between Connecticut CTD and UConn has used satellite imagery to measure the land cover and with I don't know what techniques they use, but they can differentiate between farmland, forest, and developed land. And there's 2 views here, one from 1985 and 2015. From this data, in 30 years, we can see that Madison, you have to get close up and look at it. Take my word for it. The data is there. It says that we have lost 4% in certain spots. Oh, can you see that? Good, you can see that. Here it is.
Yeah.
Up there, the green one. We have lost over 4% of its forest canopy, or about almost 1,000 acres. The color charts show growth in developed and residential and loss in farm and forest areas. And when I dug a little deeper by looking at this data for the 15 municipalities of Scrog, for those who don't know Scrog is our sort of neighborhood network where we try to collaborate together with other towns and municipalities, the South Central Regional Council of Governments, we see that every town is losing forest, and we happen to be the league leader in terms of the number of acres lost on tree canopy. So thinking about the next 9 additional years since this data set, we can extrapolate that Madison has lost over 1,100 acres worth of tree canopy, and conservatively, that's equivalent to over, based on the rule of thumb of 100 to 300 trees per acre. And so that's over 100,000 trees on the conservative side in our little corner of the world. That percent of lost canopy is greater than the size of Hammonasset Beach State Park. And it's almost as large as the amount of land that Madison Land Trust manages. So here we are losing land at the same size that we're trying to manage land. Now let's switch gears and look at what we are as a town have been trying to do and what we want. In the 2013 POCD, the official strategic plan for the community, there was a consistent message about the importance of our scenic resources, and that clear cutting, this is in writing, that clear cutting of trees and private property was to be regulated. Well, now in the evaluation and the development of the 2024 POCD report, a different sentiment has come forward, and the concern over clear cutting seems to have taken a step backwards. It's now not mentioned directly. And I just want to point out that this is a concern with residents of Madison. Many of them are here, many are attending, many of them have been vocal. So we are a little disappointed that it doesn't have a more prominent place in the POCD. Maybe it will still yet, but no, it can't. It's been done. It's fine. It's fine. Perhaps though, and as I talk later, we can get trees mentioned in regulations that have to be written now, rewritten to match the goals of the plan of the POCD. All right, clear cutting across Madison. Some examples, the Cranberry Hill subdivision, that's not one that's gotten a lot of attention. It's right off Route 80. It's 7.6 acres and it's about the size of Roberts Plaza up by the circle. That's how big it is. And you can see it from the satellite picture there. Nearby is off of one of my neighboring roads is the Race Hill project. It's a residential project where a significant number of trees have been removed from Race Hill Road, with many of them being close to wetlands and on a slope, which could be an issue for the Dowd Hollow Brook. Now, this has all been properly vetted, and I'm not here to complain about what happened with any of these. I'm just trying to show you that it's visible, right? Every time we just drive by, we see it. We see it now, Eversource is another issue. That's even a bigger visible problem. This won't directly deal with this, but there is plenty enough development going on that we got to start being concerned about how again, I'm going to say this one more time. We are not preventing anyone from cutting down any of those trees. What we're trying to present or offer is that how can we replace them? How can we replace them? They're going to start little, like a good old Mac for tree guy, but let's replace them and let them grow. We'll never catch up, but we got to fight and try. We'll talk about 251 later. So how are other towns doing this? We are one of the few towns that doesn't have a tree ordinance in Connecticut. Over 30 towns have tree ordinances. Here in green, you can see the ones that do, and all those also have a volunteer body called either a tree committee or a tree advisory board, all helping the tree warden, all providing extra resource for the town to help make it more cost effective. Guilford, as we all know, is a town with very similar demographics to Madison, and they have had a tree ordinance for only town and street trees. So no private. That's the big issue here. And that's the big challenge where we're going to be talking about is how can we get a little bit of coverage on private property in addition to the public lands that we have. And also planning and zoning projects. That's going to come. So only Durham and Madison on this list do not have a tree ordinance. And if you dig a little, deeper, you look at the current budgets, both Madison and Durham have, budget. I'll be the first one to admit that this may not be apples to apples. It's so hard. I just look for the word tree and it only shows up once in both budgets, basically. So these are the numbers from the budgets. Durham spends twice the amount on trees as Madison does. And second, the spend is significantly larger as a percent of the total expenditure. Now, I'll be the first one again to say that this could be a little bit, not exactly apples to apples, but the point here is that in both cases, the amount spent on tree removal is insignificant to the rest of the budget, with Madison only allocating less than 1/10 of 1%.
Tree removal.
That's the only item on the
Yeah,
budget
that's
that
what I'm
says
saying,
tree.
that's what I'm
And-
saying, but
and then-
it's the budget to remove trees in town, so it's not,
Our
Right.
town spends 1/10 of its
Yeah.
budget, 1/10 of 1% on trees. Okay. Our team has 5 people, as I mentioned. We've done our due diligence, we've done our research. This work, and thank you for the library. Many of these meetings were at the library. Over 200 people hours, investing 8 months, including interviewing experts from towns like Guilford and Hartford. We've talked to the tree warden and the city forester of Hartford. We've talked to the board of Madison Land Trust. We talked to my home insurance agent. We talked to 3 tree service arborists and 2 environmental lawyers, one who happens to be in the room today. Written and verbal input has been given to the plan of POCD, and we've made specific suggestions on how to rewrite existing regulations and the specific applications and checklists that go with, development projects with a tree ordinance in mind. So we'll just go through that quick. One more time, I can't even hear this. Even on private property, this ordinance that we are proposing will not prohibit the cutting down of any tree, even these. So we'll not go into any of this, hardly any of this detail. These are the principal sections. I'm just going to briefly talk about the 4 main ones. The first important one is the purpose. Why are we doing this? And it's a really important purpose, which I mentioned earlier. It will help to protect and preserve and help us replace trees that we're losing. It will follow the state of Connecticut guidelines on maintaining tree canopy. It does all of this while representing the rights of property owners to maintain, protect, and improve their properties. And please realize it is not getting any better out there. We and the trees are in for some tough times. Maybe it's nice to have 80 degrees for Halloween, but we'll see what happens in a few more years. Some definitions, these are all, they speak for themselves. I just do want to point out that there's 3 important numbers in this ordinance that you need to remember. 6, 4, and 18. 6, 4, and 18. What are they? 6 is the number of trees that we are proposing can be cut per acre per year. And that means, for instance, like in where I live in North Madison, where lots are typically 2 acres, I can cut 12 trees without having to get a permit, without having to bother anybody in the staff. It'll be, as long as you can document it on a piece of paper that someone looked at it and verified that your trees are dead or not, or they're within striking. So this is clear cutting. For any reason, you just want to clear the trees, you can clear 6. So that's the 6. The tree has a definition itself, a tree. In most ordinances around the country, this is the definition of the diameter of a tree, 2 inches. After having our meetings and presentations, we've accepted that we will double that to go to 4. Hartford has 2. We will go 4. we would propose 4. The town tree fund is a place for, and I'll get into this in a little more detail, but as projects get developed and trees need to be replaced, if there's no room to place the tree, they can provide an equivalent amount of money that's decided by the board to go into a tree fund. And that will help other people plant trees. It'll be a self-sufficient, hopefully a self-sufficient fund. And let's see, let's keep going. Oh, I'm sorry, I should go back. The specimen tree, I don't want to forget about the specimen tree. A specimen tree is really just a big tree. We're going to call it a big tree. And here's where we also made a compromise. In our original proposal, we used the Hartford definition of a specimen tree and a 13 inches DBH. DBH is the diameter at breast height, so 54 inches. You go up to the tree and you put your tape measure around the tree there. That's what this is. We went to 18 inches. I don't know if there's any examples at 18. We may be standing alone with this one. For instance, how old? Well, first of all, this tree is could be up to 10 years old. This tree is up to 20 years. If it's a white oak, it's 20 years old. Any guesses as to how old this tree is? 65 years old, if it's a white oak. And this one, we're talking about almost 100-year-old tree. So in our ordinance, what we're proposing is that there'll be some review required if someone wants to cut down a 100-year-old tree. On private property that is healthy and non-hazardous. We'll get into the details a little bit more. Just remember that one. I'm gonna briefly say a tree replacement plan. You have to remember one little jingle. It is, a tree that gets cut down, let's say this is a 24-inch tree, we would like that tree to be replaced by a number of trees that equal 24 inches. So that would mean 6 trees of 4 inches diameter. That's the like for like. That's the inch for inch rule that we're going to be proposing in the ordinance. Now here's the permit part. Now the heart of the ordinance. This section primarily pertains to the private property. This is the one that gets everyone concerned and riled a little bit. We are looking at a balanced approach to limit situations. We are going to try to limit situations where permitting would be required. This tree ordinance will focus primarily on 2 areas: situations where large, that's greater than this 100-year-old tree, called specimen trees, and standard size trees for clear cutting. So if we're talking about individual trees that need to be taken care of, repaired or pruned or removed, we usually use the 18-inch. If we're talking about clear cutting, which is a scar on the earth, we're talking about trees, and that's 4 inches. And one more point I want to make out with our zoning laws. Below I-95, most properties are 1 acre or less. So when it comes to clear cutting, most of the time your house is positioned. Imagine this is 1 acre. Oops, 1 acre. You put your house right here. And you got tall trees. They're all within striking distance. You would automatically get a pass on getting a permit because the trees are nearby. So we are looking to have a tree removal permit to remove a specimen tree or to clear cut trees on 1 acre or greater in size. The exceptions, and this is the important part, this is what makes it manageable. This is what makes it not a burden, because there's so many exceptions. The exceptions are any tree that endangers a person as certified by a licensed arborist or a tree warden. I needed a tree cut. I called up a tree cutting company. The guy was an arborist. So most companies have arborists on their staff. Any tree within striking distance of a structure, as certified by anybody with a tape measure, basically, but a licensed arborist and a tree warden, or any dead tree. Again, we can't just take the word of yourself. You're not professional. And I give you an example of someone that took a tree down that thought was dead and wasn't dead. So there's those help simplify the process. And one more reminder, no one will be prevented from removing a tree on their property. Only healthy, large trees far away from the home and you still want to cut it down, would require a tree removal permit. Any other tree that has any kind of issues, just get the check, do your homework, and then you can have it cut down. This section is targeted more toward planning and zoning. So every time there's a new big project, like new low-cost housing on Cottage Road, there's a application process checklist that you follow, landscaping plans. We are proposing that a tree survey be included in that a tree protection plan be included, as well as a replacement plan. Tree protection is just making sure you put a fence around a big tree so the big tractors don't bump into it, or even run over its feet. If you run over a tree's feet, like they did at GSP at the bank in downtown, that Copper Beach died because of all the construction that was done on top of its roots. Anyway, that's tree protection. I don't know, again, this ordinance does not prohibit cutting down a tree, which is a real shame, honestly, but we have listened to the town and we tried to balance property rights and canopy preservation. These are examples of the types of applications that planning and zoning has for subdivisions, coastal site plans. All of these we have reviewed already, and we have provided suggestions to the POCD as to how to add, edit, to incorporate this new ordinance. And there's a lot of them. There's 3 books, book 1, book 2, book 3. We went through all of them and we found the word tree. And every time we found the word tree, we reviewed it and provided suggestions. I'm not going to say it's complete, but we're ready to help. Our team will gladly participate in the rewriting process to help it go faster. So here's an example, current wording. Make sure you do the location. This is describing the work you're doing. We're asking that we add a tree survey be included in that. I didn't want to go in a lot of detail, but we're asking that tree surveys be done. What's a tree survey? Tree survey is just basically, the guy that came to my house to do my trees, on a piece of paper, his form, he just maps out my house and where the tree's located, and he writes down the size and species of the tree. That is a tree survey. Okay, again, we see that this is now listening. I asked a couple of the board members to provide feedback. We try to incorporate it into this discussion. So there was concerns about that too many private trees would qualify for regulation. It's not true. And this is based on talking to other towns that have permitting processes, and based on what we're doing and all the concessions we're doing with the size of tree, et cetera, there won't be that many. But if there is, we are offering to have the tree advisory committee be a potential resource. Now, the legality of that, how you can delegate to, official duty to a volunteer group, that needs to be worked out, I guess. In terms of the process, my guy is, we don't have the people, we don't want to increase our budget, we don't want to hire. First of all, remember, we only spent 1/10 of 1%. Was that? No. Less than 1/10 of 1%. Maybe we can double it. We just gave the VHF 150. Let's double the 70 and we'll have the same amount.
That was the state, not the town.
Okay. Additional fees and costs associated with with creating the tree survey. So when you go to planning and zoning with your application, a lot of times you need an architect. You need a landscape guy that can draw all the plans and blueprint, make sure it's accurate. That same group would have, either has the staff or would hire somebody to be part of that application process. So yes, there's a cost involved. And when we talked to the Hartford forester, she said, that's about $350. So in the scope of a big project, $350 to do the right thing may not be too bad. And the permits, we would not need a permit in the P and Z application process. That is a permit, so to speak. So we wouldn't double dip. A permit would only be needed for private situations where you're afraid it's going to hit your house. I'm sorry, if it's not going to affect your, it's a healthy tree and it's way far away, yeah, then we ask for a permit. That's not going to happen that often. So what's at stake? Well, if we do nothing, we will fail to live up to our stated goals in the POCD, and we'll fail to make the state's targeted attempt at balanced tree canopy. With the current situation with climate change, it's only going to get worse. We will lose the beauty and nature that we have grown to love. We will see more flooding, soil erosion, increased runoff, lost habitat, and higher cooling costs. I have trees all around my house, and I hardly ever turn the air conditioning on in the summertime. And worst of all, we will fail our younger generation. We will fail the young children. If we do nothing, then thousands of trees may not get the chance to live long enough to have an impact on stopping the climate change, and may not even get to become notable trees like this. This is 9 trees that I took pictures of a while ago, of notable trees in Madison. As it turns out, 2 of them have been involved at the scene of the crime. 2 of them, the sycamore was under consideration during the sidewalk project to help connect the new school to Green Hill Road and to Daniel Hand. Thanks to the board, thanks for them realizing what was going to happen. That giant sycamore, does it have a name? It needs a name. It should have a name. But Big Fran, biggest Fran deserves to be protected and not have a sidewalk stepping on its feet. This is a different story. This is a champion, well, not champion, I'm sorry, a top black walnut that was behind the old Elizabeth's restaurant on Boston Post Road. I always use my wife as the scale. That's her how tall that tree is. This was done a number of months ago, but this tree is on the list of the Connecticut notable trees, and this list that you barely can see are the top 34, I think, of Madison by points. It's not just how big it is, how tall it is. It's the breadth. It's all 3 components that give the total score. It's number 10, that tree, of all kinds of trees in Madison. And I went around at Guilford, Clinton, nobody has a black walnut on this list. We do. And when you look at Connecticut as a state, that tree was number 16th, the 16th biggest black walnut. Well, that's the picture on October 21st. We went on a holiday down to Virginia, and I saw almost the same tree. It was everywhere along James Madison. Okay, I'm a little corny, right? James Madison loved these trees. He had them all over his property in Montpelier. So I came back real proud, but I looked in September, there's a lot, it's gone. It's gone. This is what's left of Big Fran. That's not Big Fran, we'll call that Big Kelly. So, that's valuable wood too. I wonder where all that wood went. I don't know. Because I went in and I asked the contractor there, what happened? He goes, well, the contractor, deemed that tree was hazardous. And I told the developer, I need to take it down. He took it down. Did he call the town? I don't know. I don't know for sure. I didn't want to really put him on that kind of a spot. But I think Based on his body language, he did not. So here's why we need an ordinance. I'm smiling. I was told to smile. This is why we need an ordinance. Because accidents do happen. That tree, all it needed was to have this limb at worst trimmed. That's what he was worried about. Oh, and guess what? He's the septic contractor. He was really more worried about that stuff. But that's been there for 100 years. Okay. Oh, I get so riled up. So anyway, I'm not gonna go into details, but it almost was done right. That tree in that corner there was marked. It was like part of the tree survey. It was even protected. We rarely do tree protection. This plan called for it. What happened? This is what would happen. This is what would happen if we had an ordinance. We would, a tree survey would be required that would reveal the importance of that black walnut. A tree warden or arborist would be called in to verify that it was hazardous, not just take your gut feeling. And it would measure it to see if it fell, would it hit something? It might recommend to prune it. But in the end, maybe it needed to be removed, but fine, good, check, it would be removed. And because it was part of the planning process, no permit needed, it would just be done. Oh, and I mentioned tree replacement plan. If that was all done properly and we said, yeah, we got to cut that big tree down, well then in exchange, we would get a bunch of smaller trees. Now that plot, that property, you're not gonna put new trees on, right? That's a parking lot. But we would then say, well, can the town have a place to put those trees? That might be hard to do on park property, but if we could work with the land trust, maybe we could. And then the third possibility, if those two don't work, is that then, okay, give me whatever you guys decide, $300 for that tree. That probably warrants maybe 2,000 more, even more. I know the value of the tree that big is like tens of thousands of dollars, but we wouldn't go that far. But it would be, something that we then could use to plant trees elsewhere, to do what I wanted to do, replace trees. You can cut them, but let's replace them. All right, I'm not even gonna do Boston Post Road, but I will show you the picture there. That's the American elm. Now you see it, now you don't. Google Earth, really good. It's a good tool. But if we have a process there, maybe I'll go through this. A tree survey would have been required. They would identify the American elm. They would say, oh, look, it's on the state right away. And then that would trigger the applicant to go to PennDOT, that's where I'm from Connecticut DOT, and get a proper permit. So there would be more eyes on the ball with the ordinance, I think. And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying with rules and with a history of rules, people learn how to play the game, how to play the game properly, how to do the right thing. Okay. I'm gonna share with you a private property example. That's the view out my backyard. I love it. It's beautiful. And I know I'm taking a lot of your time. I'm getting hoarse, but I really appreciate it. I put blood, sweat, and tears into this. Okay, let's look at a specific example in my backyard. I'm blessed with 1.8 acres of wooded land, partially surrounded by the water company. After a couple of years ago, the gypsy moths, they really attacked the white oaks and red oaks in my backyard. And I reached out to 3 different services to get quotes, and they all came back. And this one guy, that comes out okay? Oh no, it's moved over. Sorry. Too much animation. So the best quote actually came from this guy who actually gave me like a mini tree survey. He listed the 8 trees that needed to be, that were dead. He verified that they were dead. They were totally denuded for over a year. And he also measured, he pointed out which ones were close to the house. But if we were to do this under today's, I mean, this proposed ordinance, there should be some distances written down. He got it we're halfway there. He's got the size of the tree and the type of tree. All he would need would be the distance from the house. In this case, North Madison, almost 2 acres, I could cut up to 12 trees. So there's no clear cutting going on here. This is strictly individual trees that are dead, that are potential hazards to my home. I would be able to cut these down without a permit. As long as the process, it gets checked. So that's basically what I just said. So in summary, and I hear the clapping. In summary, we originally presented a more restrictive ordinance to the town in May. I agree. It was one based on the current Hartford law. I thought that made sense. It should be fair. It protected all trees, public and private, of this size, the 13-inch. We've listened to feedback from the town with regards to the striving to have a more balanced approach, which would protect both trees and private property rights. We feel that we've done this by increasing the DBH to 18, which is typically a 100-year-old tree, and allowing most private trees to be removed without a permit. Though it's not the most desirable outcome, we have resigned ourselves to seek, I have resigned myself, I'm going to speak for the team, I've resigned myself to seek only to protect large, healthy, non-hazardous private trees while also regulating clear cutting, something I know the board is for, and a lot of people are for. Planning and zoning applications will require a little extra paperwork and a small extra cost. This would be borne by the developer and should be something that will not be burdensome for our staff, based on the experience that we've seen in Hartford. So some people call it a tree ordinance. I call it preservation. So again, there'll be very few situations requiring a permit. But if we don't do these things, we will have more accidents like 885 and 251 Boston Post Road. Why is it always on Boston Post Road? Our most visible, it's our gallery. And there's the big trees are under issue there. Our town tree canopy will continue to shrink, and at a time when climate change is only going to make things worse. Very few situations require permits. And I leave it here where we want to help, we want to collaborate, and we're ready to take the next step by working together with the town's legal counsel. If that's jumping too far ahead, presenting more again if we need to. I'm not going to write anymore. I'm done. This guy is done. This guy's written 15 versions. We're done. So please, if you feel this is important, I'm smiling. If you feel this is important, which I know you do, take the initiative to begin the process. Assign some people to help us finish this and carry it over the finish line. Thank you. That was a quick drive around the town a couple of days ago. Beautiful.
Well, thank you for that presentation. Very thorough, covered a lot. Also, I want to thank you and all the team you've been working with, because I know that I've had the opportunity, Jen and I have had to have some back and forth a little bit with you, also with the town planner, trying to bring more of like the town perspective, the administrative perspective, right? Because sometimes there's these great ideas, but then to implement, right? And it's not just about staff time, it's practicality, it's being, and so I know you really tried to take those to heart. So I appreciate all the revisions that you've made and changes you've made. I think this is obviously something the board is very supportive of moving forward with something. And I think that's where we have to talk about what we feel comfortable and hear from the broader community also about what they would feel comfortable doing. So I just wanted maybe a few minutes, I don't know, we'll give every board member here to weigh in for a few minutes, and then we would like to take this up at another meeting to have a more thorough board discussion about this. It's a lot to take in. We've had a little bit of an advantage because we've been involved more, but the other board members have not had that opportunity.
Yeah, I apologize. I sent this presentation late in the afternoon. I was still fiddling with it. But you had a copy of the ordinance.
Yeah, we received that,
Okay.
that information, yeah. Just a couple of things. Where does the forestry management plan fit into a tree ordinance? We own, as a town, a considerable amount of forested acres. And then there is also the land trust that owns a considerable amount of forested acres. As wild as they are, they probably should be curated to some degree. I'm in Rockland every weekend. I see, there are more widowmakers in there than there are healthy trees at this point. Where does that topic fit into this discussion? Are they separate? Is a forestry management plan completely separate from a canopy ordinance?
I'm gonna look at my expert here. We hope we can help. I personally do not know. I have not come across that in our review of the other towns. They've always been able to, and I know Hartford has forestry division. I mean, they have regulations for forestry, but they also have this general ordinance. So I think they live together, but I don't know.
I guess on town property right now, the tree warden manages town property, right? So that's ongoing. You could say there could be more management and more planting but that's a separate.
What,
Whole
is
nother
there a specific
discussion.
thing you're worried about? Like
I'm just thinking scope.
Scope.
I'm thinking scope, and if they're adjacent but separate, that's fine. I'm not trying to pull them together.
Yeah.
The other thought I have is, what if I have a 36-inch Bradford pear? Are you gonna bring the saw? Or a 36-inch white pine? Trees that we would actively discourage people from planting as landscaping trees. Would you say that a 36-inch white pine is a notable tree? Or is it just a big scourge?
I don't understand the point of that question.
Well, you're designating the trees to be protected by size.
Yeah.
There
The
are,
tree's there, in my opinion, the tree's grown that long. It's contributing to, the CO2 sequestration. I don't,
so is that the primary goal of?
I am not limiting, I'm not saying we can't cut down, or we should cut down invasive trees. That's getting too detailed and I got the impression that you don't want me to go with that much detail. I'm trying to keep it real simple. Tree is a woody fibrous plant.
Okay, so you're not distinguishing between,
I would love to, but that won't fly.
okay. That was all I have for questions.
As usual, Fran, I find a lot of merit in this proposal. The analogy I want to make is to our Inland Wetlands Commission, which seems to share some of the same dynamics that you're proposing. And I understand they have real challenges when it comes to enforcement. And they seem to be especially challenged when somebody, let's say, clear cuts. And the remediation seems so inadequate afterwards. So I think that one of the things this board will need to consider is how do we go about enforcing, and what do we do when someone blatantly violates the spirit of this kind of activity? We all looked at the clear cutting that took place by Eversource over the summer, and I think most of us were aghast about it, and it seems like any kind of remediation is just inadequate and eons long.
Let me address that, at least from the Eversource. I mean, I sat in on the Guilford Tree Committee meeting where they regularly have a member from Eversource attend, whatever the regional Eversource person is. And they very cooperative because they have a good relationship. It's not adversarial. So, and when I think of Hartford, Hartford has a arrangement, it's an agreement that if Eversource has to remove, I guess it might be a street tree or a town tree, whatever, if they have to do something, they compensate the town, the city. So they have Eversource trained. So in terms of compensation, Eversource is doing it when you really ask hard for it. And I hope that, you know, we don't live in an ideal world, and we know people are gonna cheat, people are gonna sneak and get around, but without an ordinance, people don't even know what the rules are. So there are good people around us that will play by the rules, and they will replace a tree. If we get hung up on worrying about the one bad apple, we'll never have an apple tree. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, and I know we talked about this when you first presented to Peggy and I over the summer. You know, I think there's a lot of merit when we look at our town properties, new development, redevelopment. Definitely a lot of merit for these types of considerations. One question, just so that I make sure that I'm clarifying, when we're talking about trees that would be in striking distance of a structure, are we specifically talking about homes, or could we be even talking about like a neighbor's property? Because maybe it's far enough away from my house, but maybe it could fall into a neighbor's property, and now that creates some, and maybe it's just their fence, but now we have legal issues amongst neighbors. Is that something that you had considered as you were coming up with those distances, the striking distances and whatnot?
I personally just assumed, I keep looking at legal and experienced people, I just assume striking distance is of a structure, it says.
Okay,
So it could be your neighbor or yours.
okay, and the
And,
street and all those,
yeah.
all those things.
I don't know.
Well, maybe structure needs to be defined
Yeah.
more than,
Yeah.
yeah, it has to be.
Because I'm just
well,
thinking, if it's my neighbor's fence, now I have to pay for my neighbor's fence if my tree
Oh, those are governed by
Potentially.
insurance rules.
fell
So,
down.
you know,
Okay.
all I'm trying to say is that law was clear in terms of the insurance, who's responsible. If the tree falls and hits your house, believe it or not, you're responsible. I mean, if you're the homeowner and your neighbor tree hits you,
Mhm.
you gotta take care of it. You gotta claim it on your insurance.
Mhm.
It's, yeah. That you should be working with your neighbor to trim and not have that potentially happen. But that's a good point. Fences versus houses, maybe need to be clarified. I just assumed it was, I was assuming houses, but
Yeah, and again, it's just me thinking about all the structures that people have on their properties, whether it's homes, fences, pools, sheds, you know, any of those sorts
Yeah,
of things,
that's a good
so,
point.
yeah.
Yeah. But again, it is, they've had tree ordinances for hundreds of years now, 100 years. So I think someone's worked it out.
Mhm.
And we'll get it right. I just want to sit down at the table with the lawyer and get it going.
I'm super supportive, so I like a lot of the ideas that you've shared. I just worry about the governance and the work that it might take to either have town employees govern, homeowners govern, myself govern, you know, my own home. So I guess that's the part that worries me. And, you know, full disclosure, I'm a strategy change management consultant. Right? Change is hard. Change is something that doesn't happen overnight by putting in a piece of paper, a tree ordinance. It's not going to happen immediately. And so I guess, to me, there's a big part of education and communication and, you know, thoughtfulness that needs to kind of be put forward here in terms of a longer term roadmap to getting us to point Z. We're starting at point A right now. I don't know how far we want to get to. I think that's the discussion we all need to have, but I worry about the governance part of it.
I'm just curious though, if we were to go back in time when they were having the meeting about having building permits for homeowners' decks. I mean, what was the discussion then? Do we have the, you know, the resources to monitor every single household in Madison to see, make sure they're not cheating and.
Well, some people aren't doing, yeah, we all know those people, so maybe we don't, but.
But it took time, and now everyone sort of knows that they're cheating. So we have to get to that point where, at least, as you said, we have to educate people that there are this set of rules now. I don't know if you can build in like an amnesty period or a transition period so that, no one gets really slapped in the wrist.
A look back.
A look back, yeah, so, well, whatever, yeah. But it's not no, but how. My motto is not no, but how. And I keep hearing, no, it's gonna be this, how do we do it then? Well, because like the deck example.
I just worry about that, the plan that you showed, and are people gonna do it? I guess that's what I worry about.
To Al's point, wetlands trees are supposedly protected now, but they're not in effect because of exactly what you described, and I can back that up with an example in my literal backyard. Sorry to speak out of turn.
No, good.
It feels like the beginning, not a reason.
But I think that's where we perhaps need to approach it in that way, that we're at the beginning of this process. And we may not get as far along as people want, but I think there's support of starting this, right? And what is that first step? I think that, we all talk about development. That was something that has just kind of screamed at us the last couple of years. Like, how do we manage that process better? How do we ensure we're protecting those trees? Or at least getting replacements for them, right? So I think the development piece is something that will have to be important. It's good timing because planning and zoning is going through a review of all their zoning regulations right now. And so that conversation from us to the planning and zoning commission, I think will be important to make sure that they start incorporating some of this stuff into it. I think once we get into the private property thing, I think that's where, as we've talked about, there's a little bit, it's going to be more an educational process. How do we implement this? How do we regulate it? How do we monitor it? It's not perfect. No regulation now. People are renovating their kitchens and they're not getting building permits, right? And then they want to sell their house. I have a, or they're adding additions. So I agree. It's not a perfect world. People are not following all the regulations now. So even if we put this in place, we're likely not going to see people follow. I think what I'm trying to understand is, and we talked a little bit about this, about the permit. And we don't have to have the answer today, but the goal of the permit is to set up, is it to stop people from taking down trees, or is it just to track people taking down trees so that, and then creating like a revenue source for the town to help replace those trees? So I'm just saying, like, the thought process, we talked about, there's an example, 2-acre lot, somebody wants to put in a pool or a shed in their back, or just open it up for their kids to play, and they need to take down 10 trees. So they come in to get a permit, right? It's in the zoning, it's in an area that has to get permitted. It's 10 trees, they all qualify as something needing a permit. Is there a point where the town is gonna say, no, we're not gonna let you do that?
No.
And I think, and that's where because we talked about this, so is it just that the town, you're applying, you're getting the permit, and the goal of the permit is to track it and then generate some sort of replacement plan for those trees, or a revenue line? And that's where I'm asking, because we didn't really talk about the purpose of the permit itself, right? It's not to say, no, we don't want, you're not gonna be allowed to do that, right?
I think our plan was easier when we first started, and then as we compromised, we started carving things out, and it gets more complicated to answer. But in my mind, private property would not require a replacement plan. To answer that, we've relegated that just to the planning and zoning process.
So it's not that you're saying people still can't take those trees down. I think that's the important message.
We're trying to,
You want them to be thoughtful.
5 times in the presentation.
Well, but I'm saying, when you say
Always cut a tree
permit,
down.
somebody's approving a permit, what's the criteria for approving the permit?
Can I? answer
That's
that,
all. That's,
please? Jim Nordgren, 387 Boston Post Road. It's certainly not to squeeze money out of taxpayers to fund something. It's not good. That wouldn't be good. It's to have some more control by planning and zoning and others in modifying the project and saying, yes, you can have that pool. Give us the tree survey. Oh, those are some special trees over there. How about saving these and cutting these? You may not have to cut as many. Maybe you just have to prune some, and explaining to the landowner sometimes the value of the trees and how much they're increasing their property value and et cetera. It's happened that the landowner has changed their mind about cutting all those trees. So it's giving the P and Z and others the ability to come up with a more sensitive plan, not to say no and not to try to pull money out of landowners. But if you knew on a tree survey, and Fran went through some of the examples, that's a specimen black walnut, or that's a disease-resistant elm, and it's not in the way of sight, that should be saved. So it allows
Timeout.
and just education during the application process with experts on P and Z and others who can say, let's make this a better project, especially in subdivisions where it's a lot cheaper for a developer to clear cut everything first. Then it's cheaper for them to move around all their equipment and stuff. They don't want to have to necessarily save
Before they've
trees.
even gone into the planning process.
And before they've gone into P
No,
and Z.
absolutely, I understand.
Which is another point as to why these two kind of dovetail each other. Regulations at P and Z, tree surveys, but also an ordinance to back it up. Because if you don't have an ordinance that says you shouldn't be clear cutting more than 6 trees, and then a developer knows that they're gonna be having to save and replace trees, they're gonna clear cut it before they even apply. So it's to prevent pre-application clear cutting is one reason why you need both. They're not standalone. But in the end, it's not to shake down anybody. I've seen plenty of examples where you can smooth and manage the location of pools or whatever it may be, or the house, in order to make a more sensitive design that's protects the beauty and even the property values of the home. So it's to give more power to P and Z and others to make a better outcome.
So I think that, and this is where I think it's important when we look at this, like, what is that ultimate goal? Because I think people hear this and they think, now I.
Regulation,
yeah,
regulation.
Yeah, and the
regulation.
town is not gonna let me cut my trees down, I wanna put a shed in, or I want open space. So I think it was important to state, I know you said this is not to stop, but to ultimately, when you hear permit, people immediately think, oh, now I gotta get approval from somebody to take down my tree. It's really about educating you to make good decisions about what you're doing with your property to preserve, because our goal is to preserve the tree. So I think that's where, as we go through this process, to make sure the purpose of the ordinance is clear. And then I think thinking through how you do that and who makes those decisions, because I know you talk about this tree commission, but we staff 60 commissions now, boards and commissions in town. And it is tough to keep people on these, and then they get quorums for a lot of these boards and commissions. And then when you are intervening in people making decisions and doing projects and things like that, relying on volunteer board and commissions is problematic sometimes, right? Because it can be, technically they meet once a month, sometimes they don't.
That's
And
why
We think
they
about
build
what
in.
Yeah.
happens when you guys.
That's
yeah,
why
and,
they-
I'm just saying though, these are all the things that we have to think about when we look about how we would roll this out, right?
That's why they-
And
They
what that
build in
would
if
look
you
like.
need to have a decision within 30 days. And if TAC or Conservation Commission can't get around to it, and then they get the applicant gets their permit.
No, and I think those are all the things, I know when we talked about this, I'm just kind of, our board didn't have the benefit of that.
And
We
we
need to
want
make
the
sure it's
public.
all, right, we want the public to know that we're gonna make sure that this is all addressed in any kind of process that we would put in place, because I think that is a frustration. My town, as much as I know we have a lot of development going on, we do not have a great reputation for making things easy for homeowners. And so, but you're balancing that with this goal of trying to preserve what's important. And especially when we see these significant trees. I think that is, to me, very upsetting to see a tree notable like that black walnut. And it's kind of done in a dismissive way because we don't have any teeth, right? And obviously everybody was upset with the Boston Post Road, situation. And so,
Was it
and I
your
will say,
house,
this
Jim?
is not gonna fix Eversource. That was a whole nother thing. And Guilford was just as upset as we were. And we were all participating in a lot of those meetings. So that was a very different thing when it was a transmission line. So,
Can I ask one other question? I have one other thing that I thought of. Being very selfish here, it's in my yard. But I think it impacts most citizens in town. What happens when you have a species of a tree dying? I mean, I am right now dealing with most, if not all of my beech trees dying in my yard. And so I may have, and I'm a very wooded, even more than your yard, on three, actually all corners of my lot. I will probably have 50 beech trees die. So what do I do in that case? Do I have to go get a plan when all my trees are dying?
But what would you do now? You would hire somebody, they would walk around and they would
Or I've
point
just
out.
been taking them down as they die. But, you know, they're dead. They're not coming back.
I think Fran was pretty clear that that's a pretty clear example of, you would hire a contractor, the contractor would identify them. The contractor as an arborist would be the authority to say, yeah, that's a dead tree, and then you just proceed as normal. I think you were pretty clear in that scenario.
Yeah.
But
What I don't know what to do is where's the paperwork? Is the owner's paperwork good enough to keep in the house and then we check it later, or does it? I hope we don't have to file it downtown, let's say. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and I think that's where Peggy was going with all of
Yeah.
this is.
I'd like it to stay.
Is this bureaucracy
It's
for
like
the sake
something-
of bureaucracy or is
Yeah.
there something
Can
bigger
it be
going
after
on?
the fact that if you needed to see the paperwork, they'd have to produce it, or I don't know.
Just in the interest of time, we're about an
Yes.
hour on
I
this
know,
subject.
we are, actually, yeah, so. Okay, so with that, we obviously as a board will be taking this up again. I will let you know the next phase, and that's where we'll have a real discussion, maybe talking through the draft orders you have and kind of areas that we want to focus on for that. So as you can tell, there's support, and we appreciate all the hard work that you guys put into it, so.
And
Thank
Fran,
you
you
for
missed
that.
an opportunity. I'm telling you right now, with that presentation. Where was your Lorax at the end? You speak for the trees.
Teacher back there.
And a perfect segue, we're gonna go from trees to paving.
Lucky you.
I
I'm sure this is the most
apologize.
exhilarating topic to go through,
Yes,
but I want to be able to come in and
Okay.
present to you all on the current status of things for the town.
Right.
Bruce, to your point earlier, I will share all of this. This was kind of a last minute thing between John and I towards the end of last week. So getting the presentation put together, but I will obviously share that with the board after. John has it, he can share it with you as well. Well, my name is Joe McGuire. I'm with Beta Group, Inc. We are a civil site engineering firm in New England, located in Hartford and Lincoln, Rhode Island. Those are the two offices I work out of. But we have 6 offices throughout the region. The group that I work for is the GIS Asset Management Group. I am a pavement management specialist. I work as a project manager within the firm. I've been with the firm for 9 years and I specialize in all things pavement management. I'm here tonight to just update the board and the community on the current scans that we completed this summer for the town. So, I don't know if that's working, Gene, so I might just tell you, I'll just say next, I guess. Go to the next slide. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
You're sharing that, right?
I'm sharing it.
Yeah, sure.
It might go now, so.
Maybe it's escape and then go back in again.
Yeah, just share it again.
Yeah, we can, that's fine. So again, Beta Group, we are a firm of over 170 employees across the New England region. Established back in 1982, so we're over 40 years old. We are doing everything from the GIS asset management group that I work with. Also have traffic, transportation, wastewater, water, landscape architecture, construction services. So we cover most things that deal with civil site engineering. Next slide. So what I'm here to talk to you about today is the current pavement management program that we're working through. The approach that we took, I'll get into in a second, but at the end of the day, what we are providing to the town is a proactive rather than reactive tool for looking at how to better spend the budget that goes towards the roads in town, but then also looking at how we incorporate preservation on the roads that you've already made the investment to upgrade and to maintain. Next slide. So what I'm talking about, just what I just mentioned. So with the program goals and objectives for what we're doing with this study, this is the Federal Highway Standard Deterioration Curve of the life of a road. Very fascinating stuff, but I'll quickly highlight the biggest thing that we're trying to do with the program, which is we're trying to address roads, not just at the bottom of the curve, those are your failed state roads. Those roads are going to cost the town more money to bring up to a score of 100 or to rebuild and reconstruct. Our program is also trying to address roads that are still in that good to excellent range, doing less costly treatments to them so that you can maintain them over time. You're spending less money on them. They're cheaper products to address those issues with the distresses that you're starting to see on roads, but you're able to basically kick the can down the road, as it were, if we're starting to address roads with preservation techniques. This is something that I'm working closely with the John I and Echo here at the town. We were hired through SCROG. So as Fran mentioned earlier, the South Regional Council of Governments, they hired Beta on behalf of Madison. We went through an RFQ process. I just want to point out, we also did a similar assessment between the 2012-2016 timeframe for the town when we were first hired by SCROG again for the entire region. So in this case, this was just for the town of Madison. We actually just submitted on a RFQ through SCROG to actually go through North Branford, North Haven, Wallingford, and Hampden. All of these towns we had done in the past, and we are currently working with a few of them. But we've recently also scanned New Haven, Meriden, Guilford, and Clinton, which is also next door. I know it's not part of SCROG, but within this 2024 pavement season. So next slide. So our approach, and I'll quickly go through this. I don't want to keep you too long, but we kind of break this down into a 5-step approach from the system setup and GIS mapping to the actual inspections themselves, the existing conditions analysis, which we are now worked through, delivered a draft deliverable to John. He's kind of gone through, reviewed it. We're kind of working through any minor tweaks he might need to make to the report itself to finalize it. And then we started working through the planning and prioritization phase. So that's kind of where we are now. And then we're going through the full system deployment and the training on the system as well, which we'll get to. Next slide. So first things first, we are a GIS group. So everything we do is GIS based. All of our deliverables, the way we map is all done in a GIS environment. For those of you not familiar, that's a geographic information system. So it's how we collect the data, how we store the data, and how we host it for the communities that we work with. In this case, we're an Esri house. So ESRI is the biggest vendor for GIS across the globe. We are a partner with them. And so everything that we do is through their suite of applications. Next slide. So the approach that we took for the town of Madison in this round of inspections, in the previous years, we had done this manually. We have a trained engineer. He goes out, he drives every single road in town. This was the old-fashioned way of doing it, and it's subjective to his rating of what he's looking at for distresses segment to segment. Since then, in about 2018, we started to see automated technologies coming on to the scene in order to capture the same type of data. In this case, for the town of Madison, we used a LiDAR approach. So what we actually did is we are partnered with a firm out of Somerville, Mass, Civil AI Technologies. They are a group of individuals from WPI who invented a small LiDAR compact scanner. You can kind of see that on top of the vehicle here in the bottom photo. So what our driver is doing during the inspections is just driving the roadway corridors that are town maintained. And that is picking up a point cloud that you can see in that upper image of the roadway corridor. So it's scanning about 50 feet in radius around the vehicle at all times. We like to do 2 passes to kind of fill that point cloud data as dense as we can to get as much data as possible. And it's also picking up things on the edge of the roadway corridor as well. So signs, street trees, pavement markings, catch basins, manholes, you name it. It's collecting that all within the data, but it's mainly looking for the distresses on the roadway surface themselves, which allow us to then convert those to a 0 to 100 score. We break the roadway networks intersection to intersection. On long stretches of road, we will break them at known locations or where severe distresses have sort of shifted. So we'll break the roadway segment there. What that does is it allows us to generate an average for the entire roadway itself, but we can also narrow the data down into specific locations. Next slide. So this just kind of highlights exactly what I said. So we are collecting it at the point level with the LiDAR. That is then being applied to that segment level, intersection to intersection, typically of the roadway itself. And then we're looking at the roadway as an average of the entire, at the entirety. So basically what I'm trying to highlight here is we can really dive into the data to the point level, segment, and then the entirety of the roadway itself. Next slide. So in this case, as part of the assessment, we were responsible for assessing about 125 miles of road, town maintained, paved. This did not include anything with gravel. You do have just under 6 miles of gravel road in town. That is a very different way of inspecting gravel roads as they're always changing, especially with weather impacts being a major factor. But in this case, we just were looking at the entirety of the 125 miles of paved road. This just gives you a quick breakdown of the town of Madison as a whole. So as a whole, you have just under 200 miles of road in town. 125 of that is maintained by the town itself. Next slide. So with that, we break our roadway assessment into 5 major repair band categories. Starting at the top, we have no maintenance required or deferred maintenance. These are roads that are scoring usually between 92 to 100. These are roads that have probably been paved in the last 1 to 3, maybe 4 years. They're really showing no signs of distresses at this point in time, so they score very high on the RSR, road surface rating scoring index. After that, we have routine maintenance. These are roads that are also in very good shape. They might be starting to show a little bit of oxidation, maybe some slight cracking that's happening, but overall in very good health. And something that we might want to start to draw attention to, these are typically your crack seal candidates, fog seal candidates. If you've ever seen the black ribbons in the roadway that you see, that's crack seal. So we're trying to address roads in that band still, so that way you're again maintaining them and not letting them fall further down the curve at a faster rate. Typically these score anywhere between an 80 and a 92. From there, we go to preventative maintenance. This is really the band that we're trying to highlight as part of this study, because these are roads that are still in fair shape. These are roads that we know we could do some sort of surface treatment to them at a low cost, and you will preserve that road at a much lower cost than letting it continue to deteriorate. Because once a road starts to go, as you saw with that curve, it goes quick. And again, that's taxpayer money that's going towards having to repair that fully with either full depth reclamation or reconstruction. Typically, these are roads at a 65 to an 80. And this could be anything from chip seals, rubber chip seals, ultra thin bonded wearing courses, shim and overlays, microsurfacing. These are the type of treatments that we see typically applied to these types of roads. After that, we have minor rehabilitation. These are roads scoring 50 to 65. Typically, these are roads in poor condition. You're starting to see quite a bit of cracking, transverse, longitudinal block cracking, some alligator cracking, even small potholes might be forming, a little bit of rutting in the roadway itself. And this is kind of highlighting where we might have more of a structural issue going on with the roadway now. Water is the enemy of every road, so is weather. And being in New England where we have changing seasons, roads can deteriorate quite fast, especially with all the rain that we have been getting in recent years. So at this point, this is where we would probably look at recommending either like a mill and overlay, so they're actually milling out a couple inches of the existing asphalt, replacing it back with new asphalt, recycling products like hot in place recycling, heavier shim and level overlays, or cold in place recycling. And then lastly, we have major rehabilitation. Everything below a 50 falls in this category. These are your failed roads. These are roads that are most likely looking at having reclamation or full depth reconstruction done to them because there is just a failed base underneath the asphalt. And there's really nothing else other than reconstructing that road that we could recommend at that point. So we'll go to the next slide. I'll be very quick with these. You kind of all know what a good road, I'm sure it looks like. So these are examples from the recent drive that we did. This is a road scoring a 98. It's almost in perfect condition. It's clearly been paved recently. Below that, we have a road scoring an 88, still in very good shape. Again, you'll see it's a little bit grayer than the road above it. So this is where we're saying you might want to start to consider potentially doing something to address that roadway and hold it at that 88 rather than have it digress further down the curve. Next slide. There we go to a road showing a 72. Again, still in very good shape, but we're starting to look at probably seeing a little bit more distresses showing up. This is something where we, again, could do a surface treatment, much more costly to the town to do it at this point in time. And then below that, we start to get into more of your minor rehabilitation with an RSR of a 55. Next slide. And then we have some of your poorer roads in town, road scoring a 40 and then a 25. So at the bottom, it's a little bit hard to see, but there's extensive alligator cracking, rutting, potholes forming, edge line cracking. So the road is starting to kind of come apart. This is what we're trying to preserve at that road, scoring more in that 65 to an 80 range. So it doesn't get to this point, and there's ways that we can help make recommendations to do so. Next slide. So this is kind of the slide I'm sure everyone's waiting for. What is the current score for Madison according to the study? Right now, you are scoring a 71.14 overall for that 125 miles of road. We're showing that you're scoring a 71.14. In school terms, I know everyone's probably looking at that saying it's a C minus, not in pavement management terms. This is actually a very good score. The communities that we work with across New England, we work with over 180 in the last 5 years alone. The average is probably about a 69, 68. So you are technically above the average. We have had scores in the 50s. So that is what we're usually working with, is playing catch up with towns. You're at a point where you have enough roads in the preservation band, routine maintenance, no maintenance required, that we can start to develop more of a preventative maintenance type of plan, but still addressing those roads at the bottom of the curve. We do not want to, I just want to stress, we're not looking to move away from fixing the worst roads in town. It's just more of a strategic way to spend the money so that you're gaining more points and more credit over the years to see that score going up. So what we have here is our estimated cost of improvement summary. This is specific to Madison. So this just shows that you have about 18 miles of road in the major rehab band, or 14, just about 14.5% of the network, followed by 29.7 miles of road in the minor rehab band, about 24% of the network. Preventative maintenance, 26.65 miles, 21% of the network. Routine and no maintenance required. So routine maintenance is about 40 miles and no maintenance required at just under 11 and a half. And you're really looking at about 40% of your network. So in terms of a pavement management specialist, when I look at that and I see that you have almost 50% of the network in good standing with routine and no maintenance required, that is a good sign. That's something that we can work with, and we can really start to develop a plan that starts to see growth in the overall score. We're not really playing catch up now. Now it's just planning out future capital improvement plans multi-year to address roads at the bottom of the curve while preserving the investments the town has already made with the roads that they've repaired. Next slide. So this just kind of gives a quick snapshot of exactly what I just showed at a GIS level with the map. The town is it's such a long town, so I apologize that the map is a little bit smaller, but you'll see that you kind of, again, you have a spread. There is some roads in the red and orange, which are your worst rated roads spread throughout the town, but you also have a very nice swath of green, light blue, and dark blue roads. The green and the light blue are your routine and preventative maintenance roads. So those are the roads that we really want to try to hone in on as part of every year, as part of the plan that we will be developing with John and also the CIP committee with input from them. So we'll go to the next slide. So the other slide that is of interest here. So this is our forecast model. We do a 5-year forecast model for every single pavement management program that we run. We look at it as a balanced model. So what that means is that pie chart that you're seeing off to the left, that is dictating how these lines are interacting with the overall score of the town and the budget scenarios that we've applied to them. So as of right now, what we are showing is a $2 million budget for roadway improvements year to year for the next 5 years will allow you to have a slight gain in your score over time. It's very hard to maintain a road network rating score. Pavement is always deteriorating. The minute you pave a road, it immediately starts to deteriorate. It's like driving a car off the lot. You drive the car off the lot, immediately depreciates in value. So trying to find that sweet spot of how much money we need to put towards the roadway program, year to year, the paving program, and then how that money is getting spent across those 5 major repair bands is kind of what we help the town out with doing. And we specialize with looking at it using forecast models as an analysis to do so. But this is very high level. So realistically, if we're able to look at maybe 2 million, a little bit more than that, and this is a conservative assessment. So we're looking at a high level, trying to be conservative with the unit costs that we're carrying. Then we're saying that we will be able to make progress over the next 5 years with the town and the overall score. 1 million kind of shows that you wouldn't have enough to really maintain. You would most likely see your score continue to go down. 1.5, same thing. We start by trying to find that middle ground, which is the 2 million, and then we try to find those 4 other scenarios on either end of the line there that shows the maintaining point. And again, that's all being run off of that distribution of the funding. So with that 2 million, we're saying 50% is still going to some of your worst roads in town, another 25% going to the worst roads in town, and then some money going towards preventative maintenance and routine maintenance of the roads that you've already made the investment in. Next slide. So this is our Manage My Roads platform. Again, we do everything ArcGIS online with Esri. So as a partner, we utilize their dashboards and we deploy these to all of our communities. So this is something as part of the deliverable with the LiDAR scan, you actually get forward-facing imagery. So an updated photo log of the entire roadway network at the time of the scan with a forward-facing camera that we have mounted to the vehicle during the inspections. You can kind of see a sample of that. But as this is a live map that you can go into, start to zoom around town, look at different sections of the town itself. Points will appear on screen. Those points represent a photo every 10 to 20 foot section of road. So you can see exactly what was being looked at the time of the inspection. But we also are highlighting different aspects of the data, the estimated cost of improvements. So what that means is if you were to spend $24.74 million tomorrow, we're saying all 125 miles of road in town could essentially be at that 100. That's not obviously a realistic goal, but what we like to do as a way to track this is year to year as a plan is put in place and we give credit to the town for the roads that they do pave. We want to just see that number going down. Essentially, that's what we want to do. We want to see the score starting to go up slightly, and that number should be going down because roads should be moving into the preventative, routine, or no maintenance required band, which will allow that backlog number to drop. We also have the overall mileage. And what this does is, as you're in the platform itself, as you're moving around, you're selecting certain roads, clicking on the pie chart, the map adjusts and the widgets around it adjust to show exactly what you're looking at. It is a view only. We are able to make it editable for the town itself, but we typically maintain it for them and host it for the community. This deployment as software for the town, because we are partnered with Esri, and I am not a software salesman, is only about $500 a year for the town to have access to. So it's very low cost. That's why we did it. It's a way to be very cost effective for the communities that we work with. And realistically, the way that this has started back in 2018 when we started to deploy these, all of this has been kind of developed with feedback from the communities that we work with to try to highlight different aspects of the data. We also track year to year everything that's being paved. So in this case, John has provided us already with quite extensive amount of history. We like to get at least the last 3 to 5 years to show, but we're able to show multiple years here in the dashboard as well to see what you've paved when, what was done to it. So we're tracking that year to year to make sure we're seeing that it's being spread across the town as well. And then we also host our PDF reports through a link at the bottom of the screen here as well for access, and in meeting settings, it's all PDF mapped, and you're able to print those off. Next slide. So as I mentioned, right now, we're kind of in that starting that capital planning stage. I came in a few weeks back, met with John to kind of review the plan, or the draft report, and then started to discuss what's the next steps going to be with coming up with a multi-year CIP or capital improvement plan. We typically like to do 3 to 5 years. We don't know, there are communities we work with where they'll try to have us go out 10 years. I don't know how they know what they think they're going to be paving 10 years from now. So we try to start small. 3 to 5 is kind of the sweet spot. That allows us to start to really hone in on the roads specifically that you're going to be repairing. We can assume deterioration on a road. Our program deteriorates every road in town by 2 points per year. So that's why, what I mean by it's kind of a living asset in town for you, because pavement's deteriorating the minute it's put down. So with that being said, sort of things that came out of the meeting with John and myself were defining the needs of the community. Peggy, he had mentioned that, one of the biggest things was the committee that's already in town looking at the roadways, but trying to incorporate pedestrian needs and cyclist needs, sort of looking at those roadways and how do we incorporate those into the plan, the multi-year plan. I think John had mentioned he wants to try to get like a 5-year plan, solid plan done. So that's all feedback we will take from the community to try to start to develop a plan. But looking at roads geographically, we want to try to group roads year to year so that you're not paying mobilization fees to paving vendors when they come in to pay. We want to try to be strategic about where we're selecting the roads and trying to still, again, get a balance of roads that are still in good shape but could use some sort of a surface treatment, and then the roads at the bottom of the curve that need to be milled or reclaimed so that they're brought back to 100 and we can start to maintain them from there. We'll go to the next slide. How we do that is our cost benefit value analysis. So we're not just looking at the roads by their rating, we're looking at functional classification. So your collector roads, arterial roads, they carry more traffic. So they're going to be weighted a little bit higher with our CVV analysis, because the more traffic on the road, the faster they're going to deteriorate over time. And then also looking at the life improvement of a treatment, what the repair band is that it falls within. The repairs, the estimated cost of repairs will also drive whether a road falls towards the top or bottom of the CVV analysis. If we have input for, like example, pedestrian needs and cyclist needs, that can get weighted into the CVV analysis.
So one thing that we've talked a lot about is density.
Yes.
And, sometimes I look at the list and we see a road that could be, 3 miles long with 4 houses on it.
Sure.
Versus a mile road that has 20 houses on it.
Right.
So, trying to have a bigger bang for a buck in terms of, impacting many of the residents.
Absolutely.
How does that get captured in this?
So, good question. Our program is run as a weighted average. So your longer, wider roads are going to carry more weight, but we also have other ways of like overlaying parcel layers, things like that, to kind of see where we have the denser populated like areas in town. That can absolutely kind of be drawn into that cost benefit value analysis to sort of say, and again, at the end of the day, I'm a mapping specialist too. That's what I went to school for. So everything we do at the end, we're not just letting the program dictate to us how the plan's going to look. We're getting eyes on it. It's QA QC'd by myself or my coworkers, and we're looking at the map itself to say, well, realistically, there is only 4 homes on it. Not to say that road isn't important to the 4 people or the 4 homes that are on it, but where can we sort of spend the money more wisely to, again, optics for the community. And also, to your point, a road that's maybe 3 miles long and only services maybe 4 homes, that's where we can start to sort of manually dictate the type of treatment done to that road, so that you're not spending a ton of the budget every year on a road like that, but still doing something that we can either hold the road with or, over time build upon it. It can be kind of more of a staged sort of construction approach to it, so that we're not just blowing the budget on one road.
Historically had gone with just this road rating, which is conditions versus taking all these other things into account. We want to really move it. And I didn't have the opportunity to meet, obviously, with staff and go through all this. So this has been very helpful for me, because this is great. I don't think we've ever had this level of analysis. It's always been just like a rating, and that's about it.
And what we did in the past when we first did the region, the SCROG region, part of that was from 2011 to 2016. It was going through every single town, the 15 towns in SCROG, doing a pavement inspection. As long as they wanted, they could opt in and out. I think the only two we didn't do at that time was New Haven and Meriden, but now we've just recently scanned both of those in 2024. But we also did a sign inventory as part of that analysis too. So we do have a sign layer that the town actually does have
Yeah.
data for. As part of the LiDAR scan, and the reason why that was kind of our recommendation, is that it's able to pick up those other roadside assets. So working with Civil AI, now that you've had a LiDAR scan done, that's a well that the town can go back to extract other data sets as they would like. Obviously, there's a fee for Civil to process that type of data out. With our agreement, it solely focuses on the pavement distresses, but it acts as a resource. So for not as much as what the actual program costs, which was nothing to the town because it was paid through Scrog,
Right.
which was great that you were able to go through them as a regional planning commission. But you're able to go back and we can extract a new sign layer to see what's been changed since the last time we did it back in, I believe it was 2013, if I'm not mistaken. But also street trees, if that's an issue here in town too, we can kind of get you a rough inventory of what you have on that roadside corridor too. So it's a nice way to be able to go back and start to extract other data to help also with sort of how we're looking at a CVV analysis for rating.
And then the bike pedestrian.
Yep.
In certain parts of town is
Yep.
becoming, that is, you have to look at the road condition differently. If people are
Correct.
walking or riding bikes.
And the treatment we would recommend being applied to it.
Right,
And
right.
that's something, John mentioned from the get-go was,
Yeah.
it's going to be, the biggest thing is going to be when we start to get to the planning stage where we're at now, is looking at the different types of treatments that can be applied, but making sure we're applying the right one to the right road. That's where we specialize as a firm coming in. There's a lot of other vendors, I'm not selling you on it, it's just sort of how the market is now, the industry. There's a lot of other vendors that will come in and they data dump. Here's your data, do with it what you need, you figure it out, make decisions. We're here as part of our support services as an engineering firm and as someone that works closely with a lot of paving vendors. I can open up doors for you to see other types of treatments to kind of see what you think might work for the town and things that you might just say, we're never going to do that here. So we get that off of the list and that way you're not just kind of shooting into the dark to say what sticks, what doesn't. You're able to use this as a resource that way as well through our support services.
I mean, I think you've already given us the slide that we've been asking for a while, which is what is the financial pathway?
Yeah. Sure.
Which is great because it's exactly
Yep.
what we've been asking
Yep.
for.
Since day one of
But just as a what if,
Mhm.
let's say we said, look, we're gonna commit in the long term to the 2.5 mil
Sure.
thing. But this year we've got 2 million.
Yep.
As a one-time infusion.
Yep.
Could you incorporate that in and say, okay, this is what it does to your curve?
Yes.
This is where we would
Yes.
recommend you put that money.
Yep. Absolutely.
And when do these projects get too big for just one season, one contractor? I know there are roads out there still waiting to be paved that have
Right.
been milled down to dirt
Yes.
and are not doing well.
Right.
in
We're
that
getting
state.
close. Yeah, we're getting close to winter.
Right.
And the colder it gets, the harder it is to get proper compaction on a road. So, we're looking at things like that too. So for us, that's something that myself and John will have to kind of sit down more and discuss, like the vendors he is using, which he's made me aware of, but then the things that he was interested in looking at trying to implement to try to preserve roads. The preservation techniques that you could take with microsurfacing, I say chip seal because it is a useful product, but I know a lot of communities tend to stray away from it because it gets a bad reputation for loose stone, but there are different types of chip seals. So one of them being a rubber chip seal. It's more of it's actually rubber asphalt, so it's recycled tires inside of it put into rubber asphalt, sprayed on the road, stone gets laid on top of that. The stone is just a wearing surface to protect everything that rubber asphalt just sealed underneath. So you're preserving the roadway. But the methodology is very different from a traditional stone chip seal where they're sweeping same day, they're picking up 90% of that loose aggregate. You're getting less complaints from communities or from residents. So it's techniques like that want to educate the public, having workshops similar to this, coming in and just kind of presenting on different treatments. That's something we can also do. But the preservation type approaches, that's where you can get things done a lot faster because there's no milling the road out, moving things, coming in, repaving. It's just, they come in, they do something to the surface of the road, they're in, they're out. You probably don't even really see them, or they're not really interrupting the day-to-day traffic or flow, as opposed to a very aggressive approach, which is having to reclaim or reconstruct a road. And now you run the risk of, when does that contractor come back? That's why we're trying to say we want to catch those roads before that happens, so you're not dealing with that year to year and constantly.
So imagine a world
Yep.
where all of the roads in town are in the first and second band,
Yes,
right? We're averaging in the 80s.
yep.
Can you keep a road there indefinitely through preventative and routine maintenance, or at some point is that road going
Great
to
question.
age out?
We just had the same conversation in Ellington, Connecticut. The Board of Finance asked the very same question. So there are pavement preservation specialists that I work with as sub-consultants that I take advice from and pick their brains, 60 plus years of experience doing it, that will tell you they can hold a road forever. But there is a line where at that point, it's really, what's the life cycle cost of how often you now have to come back to that road to do it? So there will come a point where it doesn't make sense to continue to hit as many times as you're going to have to maintain it. You could. I use Electric Connecticut as a good example. They've been working with us for quite a while now. We've done 3 scans with them already in the last 10 years. And they have implemented a heavy preservation approach. But Steve Maslin, the director there, he has also been with the town for 30 plus years. So he's been able to kind of see what he needs to do. But he will tell you, and he's done it, and their score shows it, because they are a community in the 80s now, mid 80s, where every few years he's hitting a road with a fog seal, a micro surface, a thin overlay, something like that, and he's repeating it. Some people have told him that'll never work, you can't do it, and he's doing it. So we have to also just look at the roadway. So that's where my specialty comes in, is going out, and once we pick the roads, it's really saying, okay, what could we do to this given road? Some roads, yeah, you could probably extend the life of those 12, 15 years after treating them maybe twice at a cost of maybe $3.40 a square yard, as opposed to $40 a square yard, reclaiming it and paving it all over again. The other thing that we're trying to draw more attention to, and I think a lot of towns are feeling this, I know Clinton, Connecticut next door, working with them, with their director for a while now, Todd, he's looking at it now too. He's got to go to preservation, because liquid asphalt is just continually going up every year. There's really no rhyme or reason for it. So what once was a healthy budget to just put hot mix, because at the end of the day, I would love to just hot mix every road, because that keeps everybody happy. That's like the perfect fix. But the price to do it, you'll get 2-3 miles of road done a year. Out of a 125-mile road network, you'll never catch up. So it's sort of trying to get that education piece back in, and that's kind of where the industry is right now. But long story short, you could, but it's really just road by road. There does come a point where fiscally it doesn't make sense, so you would just sort of restart, or maybe you only do a mill and overlay, so you're milling out some of that surface and putting a new surface back, as opposed to reclaiming it all the way down. So you're still not having to do anything to the base of the road, you're just getting rid of some of that really aged asphalt on the road.
I have a key question.
Yeah.
But it's not for Beta, it's for our selectmen. How do we transmit this information to the capital planning process? Who picks the number?
Well,
Ken and I wanted to.
yeah. So I think this is the first time I've had the opportunity to see the presentation.
Yes, and again, apologize on
Yeah, no,
being
no,
short
no, I'm
notice.
just saying, I would like to go away and spend a little bit of time with staff going through this. We talked about this, it was actually almost a year ago, we talked about this, right? Coming up with, is there an infusion amount we would want to do? What's the right budgeting amount? And so I want to kind of go through that exercise and come up with some thoughts, and working with them to do that. We just haven't sat down and really gone through that process yet. So, and I think that, we improved our rating, I think, part
Yeah, oh, yeah.
we put, we did an appropriation, I think it was 2.5, 3 years ago, to get ahead and try to get the numbers up. But we have headwinds because the costs has gone up
Yes.
so much more. So it's like, we're just constantly, I feel like we're treading water a little bit now. So then the question is, how do we get ahead of it again?
Right.
be proactive, and what's that, right budgeting amount in the future, like to Bruce's
Well, and
point,
now,
so-
but now we have metrics.
Yeah,
So now-
I know,
so
it's
now
not- it's not guessing,
We're not
it's- yeah.
arguing in the qualitative sense, is
Yeah.
it 750,000 or is it
Yeah.
a million?
Right,
We've got numbers with data behind them that
Yeah.
say, you know, this is what we should expect.
Yeah.
And I mean, for my part, Al, I think this board would set the guideline where we want to see this amount of money in the road budget on an annual basis. And
Maintain a total score of 75.
yeah.
Or something, right?
Yeah, we
or
can,
be on a track to be
Yeah.
increasing that average at a reasonable
A
pace.
point a year or something, yeah.
and to your point, I mean, one of the other things we can do as part of that sort of discussion is say, what if we come up with that number, that rough budget number, we can run the forecast model again. We can also, again, play with that distribution of the pie chart of how much of it's going towards, major rehab, minor rehab, how much of it towards preservation and routine maintenance. That's all going to impact it as well. So we can kind of, again, find that sweet spot to get, if you have a goal in mind, if 75 is where you want to get to, let's start by seeing how long we need to maintain a certain budget number to get you to that 75. And that's what a lot of communities do. East Hampton, Connecticut, great example. They've been a very good success story for myself. I work with over 42 communities in Connecticut right now on this very topic. But they looked at it as, okay, where's he was being funded like $350,000 a year for an 89 or 90 mile road network. It wasn't getting anywhere. So we had to do the analysis and it was a slow start, but what came out of that for him was immediately the board was like, okay, we need to get you money, but they did it incrementally. So he knew it wasn't gonna be a giant jump, but you guys are not in that same situation. You're already above the average we see for New England. Again, you have plenty of road miles to pull from to preserve and do routine maintenance. So again, we're talking routine maintenance costs are probably $1 a square yard is the average cost for some sort of a routine maintenance, crack seal, fog sealing. That goes a long way. Those are treatments that are extending the life of the road 3 to 7 years, depending on what type of product you're
Yeah,
using.
and I think discussion, I know
Yeah.
maybe you've talked with John, because I think historically we've been resistant to chip sealing, right? It's just not a
Yeah.
practice, but I think there's
A lot of
different ways to do
communities-
it now, and
Yep.
so looking at some of that, and then I think also factoring in the the density issue and things like that to make sure that we're hitting the areas
Sure.
that, are impact, a higher impact for residents.
And at the end of the day, this is your data, it's your plan. I'm here to just help as a guide and to run analyses for you so that you can better make decisions.
Yeah.
I'm never going to tell you, and we're never gonna let a program dictate to you how you have to run your capital improvement plan. It's just, like you said, you have metrics now to kind of help make those decisions.
And so I think that we'll internally have some more
Yeah.
follow-up, obviously with
Yep.
staff, and then we'll come back to the board with some thoughts about what we should be doing. We
Yeah.
obviously need to move this up pretty quickly because of the budget season we're entering
Yeah.
very quickly.
Right.
So
This is
the
great.
next, 4 to 6 weeks will be addressed.
Perfect.
One more question.
Yeah.
Is the state, what is the state doing relative to these kind of things? Because I guess my example in mind is Route 79 and Route 80.
Yep.
And they F those roads up, in my opinion. I'm sorry, but.
No.
It's like a spider web. I don't think we want roads that look like spider webs.
No,
Well,
I-
is that a tactic? Because I see.
It's,
I think it was a kid painting or something.
Well, no, but it's some.
it looks like a Picasso painting.
Yeah, not
What is that? Like, why do they?
That's crack seal. It is a product that is useful. However, you have to be very, you want to be conservative with how much you're putting down.
It's
Because,
gotta be a guideline, I would think, right?
yes, so I'll use my road I live in Westerly, Rhode Island. I'll use my road. I think my road is actually in pretty decent shape. My town had a firm come out and crack seal. You would think my road was in terrible shape with the amount of black lines now that are everywhere, and I was kind of like, I just didn't really think there were that many cracks on my road, but okay, sure. So it's just knowing what's going to work best for the community. So as opposed to crack sealing, you have fog seals. That's something that is just it's literally an asphaltic spray going onto the road, and it's sealing up the road, protecting it from oxidation, UV rays, and also water penetration. So there's other ways to do it, and then you're covering the whole road and you're painting the road black. Optics wise, it looks nicer, you're not getting those lines. Crack seal is it's definitely a useful tool, but it's how you implement it and how you use it. So you want to be very selective about certain things.
God,
The best part is, I love, they put in the new crosswalks. They
Yeah.
painted them,
Yeah.
and then crack sealed right over.
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
So paving vendors that I work with are probably
Oh
cringing
my
right now, but yes, you gotta be very selective as to,
Yeah.
and that's again where we can give guidance and things like that. Real quick to wrap it up, I don't wanna keep you, but, so as part of the next steps, so again, please, I'll get this over to you, you can digest it further.
Yeah.
Get you a PDF copy of the draft report, John, I don't know if John shared it or not yet, but I know he had just gotten it himself, but typically what we like to do moving forward is, again, we track your roads that you do improve year to year, give you credit for those. Certain treatments obviously give certain scores, so doing a full depth reclamation or a mill and overlay, you're gonna get that road to 100. Preservation, we kind of look at years life added, and that's how we come up with how many points that road will get assigned to it. But we typically like to reassess roadways every 3 to 5 years, because what that allows us to do is, one, make sure that the deterioration is happening at a consistent rate that we would expect. But in a case like this, typically we see towns and communities doing it more every 4 to 5 years. 3 years can be a little aggressive. There's firms out there that'll tell you to do it every year, every other year. There's no reason to. We can build in deterioration like we have with our program. That allows us to really make educated guess as to where the overall health of the network is. So again, we're not here just trying to promote just reassessing roads every year. It doesn't make sense. It's kind of a waste of town funding and town money at that point. But again, Scrog, you guys have a great resource. I know John has a great relationship with them. Beta's been working with them for quite a while, so we're happy that we were able to do this assignment for the town.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it.
One final question, because you mentioned quality assurance. You used your new technology and you did all 125 miles
Yes.
of road. Do you go back and say, we're gonna go back and do 5% of the roads as a clean data set and see how repeatable the scanning is?
So what we typically do is when we reassess, we keep that legacy data from the first scan. And that's how we do our QA/QC internally on the data. And I should have mentioned this earlier, we do not just take the AI technology that's being used now to rate a road and say that's gospel. We have our trained engineers looking at that. So eyes are on every single road. So the ratings that we've provided in the draft report to John, that is a QA/QC data set. It's not raw data. It's already been vetted by trained engineers for consistency's sake. What's nice about the LiDAR approach is that is a machine learning technology, so it only gets better the more data that's being fed to it. So when we reassess again, let's say in 4 or 5 years, that original data set from this year will get put side by side to ensure that we're seeing that scores are coming in where we would expect them, and that's kind of how we do the vetting of it and making sure that it's a consistent data set for the town. So, but again, I appreciate your time. I'll get out of your way.
Thank you for
Thank you
enduring
very much for
the tree discussion, so you've.
No, it's all good.
Sounds like a symbiotic.
No, it's okay.
Appreciate it.
No, it's all
And
good.
thank you for hanging around.
I can answer the question about why the prices went up. I used to be in purchasing of petrochemicals, and it's because of the sanctions on both Venezuela and Russia. They're on heavy crude. Heavier the crude, the more asphalt you get. And the other thing is, the other driver is natural gas is cheaper, and it's replacing petroleum as a energy feedstock. So that's going to continue to drive that price up all the time. But with Russian sanctions gone, it should come down a little bit.
Frank Brady, master of everything.
All right, well, thank you for that.
Take your walnuts.
So, let's, as we get to each of these, talk about how we spend a lot of time. Item number 10, discuss and take action to adopt a resolution regarding Eversource EC project.
The move.
Second.
Okay, I know Aaron is on here. Was there any questions? This is pretty straightforward, I think, in terms of what it is. And it's a necessity for the new elementary school. So any questions on this?
No.
No? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great. Item number 11, we do not have to spend a lot of time on this, but the Board of Finance, I just wanted to update you on ARPA. The Board of Finance, they tabled the request from the VFW because we knew that they were getting this grant, $150,000. So basically opted not to fund the grant for the VFW, knowing they were getting the state money. So that money will come back in to the balance that the town has to appropriate for ARPA. The second thing is they did make a reduction in the request from Public Works regarding the maintenance of the Public Works made a request so they could do maintenance on town vehicles. And there was kind of a little bit of back and forth about the police and how much of the police department was gonna be using this and whether or not they needed the second lift. I think at the end of the day, some of this was communication, I will say, between the two departments. But I think it was agreed that they supported it, they just removed the second lift. So it will be able to, they'll have the equipment to cover town vehicles now. So they approved, so it was a reduced amount. That amount of money will go back into the,
39,000.
yeah. So I think there was like a $10,000 savings or something out of that. So November, we will come back with the final balances and we have a list of outstanding things we haven't taken up and then also talk about how we close this all out. So we're good timing wise to have it all appropriated and ready to go by the end of.
If it makes sense to do a special meeting just on that one topic, that would be
Yeah,
fine.
okay,
Do an
Yeah,
evening,
I agree,
yeah.
meeting, and just have one agenda
Right,
item.
yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be
You
in
don't want to put it in a
November.
3-hour meeting?
Yeah, I know. So that was why that was on there. I wanted to make you aware of some of the changes the Board of Finance had made. Item number 12, discuss and take action to approve revised charges for the following town committees. A, Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and B, Affordable Housing Committee.
So moved.
Second. Okay, so we've been through these a couple times. We had decided as a committee, we're not gonna make them an ordinance. They're just gonna be a committee with a charge. And I think they had made the amendments and reorganized it the way we had wanted it. And so, I hopefully we're in a place where we just approve.
I do have a question, so
Yeah.
not necessarily objection, but a question. So let's start with the bicycle committee. In their duties and responsibilities, we're giving them authority to engage in public awareness campaigns, education events, conduct research, engage technical consultants. Are we empowering them to spend money with no oversight or?
No,
Are
they're basically, when we say that, we're actually gonna be hiring with their using planning reserve money. They don't have a budget. They have to come to us to get the money.
Okay,
But
that's
yeah,
just clarifying
yeah,
that.
they're not having a
So
budget.
they
no.
can come to us and say, we need to
Yeah.
engage, and we get to say yes
Right.
or no, and this is how much you
Right.
have.
Right, and
That's-
remember, we took all the money from there was like collections of little money for different, we put it in a pool under like land use, for example, that they would make requests for funding for like their bike rodeo or, because I think a lot of boards and commissions wanted their own budgets, and we
Yeah.
found that it was better to pool it, because some years commissions used it and some years commissions didn't,
Right.
so
Right.
this does not give them any budgeting authority or anything like that.
Okay, just as long as they're
Yeah.
clear on that, because it reads, it kind of black and white, it reads,
Yeah.
they can do that, they can go out and
Yeah.
engage consultants and.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably, we're doing that now through the bike ped study, but it's going through this board
Okay.
and through the planning process, so. Okay, so, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, all right, item number 12. Item number 13, these are actual ordinances, and so it requires a public hearing. Discuss draft ordinances. Just so you know, if we're good with these, then the next item would be set a public hearing, and then we would vote to adopt them after the public hearing. So we're trying to put these all together. Discuss draft ordinances for the following boards and commissions: a flood prevention, climate resilience and erosion control board, senior services commission, and youth and family services board. So you have the drafts in front of you. I don't know if you want to talk through them. I think you've seen all these before, right?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, so, if everybody's comfortable sending these to public hearing, then I can just read item 14 and we can send them to public hearing. Is that good?
Yep.
All right, great. So, item number 14, discuss and take action to approve calling a public hearing on Monday, November 18th, 2024 at 6:30 PM at Madison Town Campus, Room A, and via Zoom for the purpose of reviewing the following draft ordinances: flood prevention, climate resilience and erosion control board, senior services commission, and youth and family services board.
So moved.
Second. Okay, any further, so we allocated it a half hour, because I'm assuming there's probably not gonna be a lot of discussion about the ordinances, and then we have our meeting at 7:00. Is everybody good with that?
Yes.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great, so that will get published and, we do our notices and stuff for the public hearing. Item number 15, discuss and take action to approve the town joining the MHEC purchasing consortium to benefit from advantageous procurement pricing.
So
Second. Okay, this is just another buying consortium that's actually through the state of Massachusetts. It's kind of similar to our state bid list. And I know the school wanted to use in the new Neck River Elementary School, they wanted to be able to do some purchasing off of this that was really price effective. So this is kind of adding it to our list of pre-approved procurement places.
Nice.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, great. Item number 16 is the budget workshop schedule. Just want to highlight, we've moved up the referendum a week under our new charter. So it's now the first week in May. And this is a draft workshop schedule. They tried to work around, I know school holidays, Jen and I are always concerned about that. You know, and this does have the 2 workshops still scheduled in it. So look at it. If there's any red flags, let me know and I can bring them back. The Board of Finance reviewed it, but nobody will vote on this in November.
Okay.
And I think, that went fast.
Citizens' comments.
Okay,
There was one.
all right, citizens' comments, somebody online?
Alex.
Okay, go ahead, Alex, if you could state your name and address, please, for the record.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Alex, Province 917 Boston Post Road. Whoops.
We
Hi,
can hear you.
Hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Alex, Province 917 Boston Post Road. Just calling in support of the tree ordinance. Wanted to mention a few things here. ACCA, which is the Advisory Committee for Community Appearance, reviewed several of the applications that featured the trees that were removed in Fran's presentation. And one thought might be to give that group more teeth in protecting those trees. For example, the restaurant on the western side of town and then Elizabeth's Cafe in the center of town, those were trees that we had talked about and had not expected them to be removed. Secondly, the Democratic Party obviously is a proponent of environmental issues, and a little bit of science is probably worth mentioning. A tree spends its entire life sequestering carbon out of the atmosphere, takes carbon dioxide, uses sunlight to glue these carbons together. When that tree is killed, sawed down, or whatever happens to it, and it is either decomposed naturally or burned as firewood, every bit of the carbon it sequestered is put back into the atmosphere. A tree is 50% made up of carbon. So you can have a mature tree that's several tons of carbon that gets released back into the atmosphere. A car uses 4 metric tons of, produces 4 metric tons of carbon dioxide a year. So you can look at these mature trees as essentially a year worth of driving per car. So any of these, you know, if we are sincerely concerned about CO2 emissions, we should be very concerned about removal of trees. Again, its entire life, 100 years of sequestering carbon goes into the atmosphere when it's sawn down and decomposed or burned. And lastly, Madison not having a tree ordinance makes it very easy for normal, good people that love trees that may have an arborist or a tree company come on their property and say, oh, that tree has a hollow in it, it's gonna come down. Well, a tree spends 50% of its life growing and 50% of its life dying. Just not having a tree ordinance in itself is very easy for someone to just dismissively inform a resident that, no, there's no tree ordinance in town, nothing to worry about. Where even a weak tree ordinance or something that exists in name only, at least would give pause and perhaps allow the resident to be better informed or think twice before they just on the spot give someone permission to take down a tree. When we look at these trees, they're living creatures that have spent, these specimen trees, hundreds or, 100 or 200 or 300 years growing. If you look at them, I know it's difficult as Yankees because we see trees as, just a resource. But at this point in society, they are no longer, simply something to be sawn down. They are something to be preserved, and they're sitting ducks right now without anything protecting them. So thank you for all the volunteers, and it was a long meeting, and appreciate all everyone is doing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I don't see any other hands raised. Oh, we have one. Heather, I guess you waited for something. You're big moment.
Very impressive, Claudia. Very impressive.
You won't take that long though, right?
No, I won't video. No, I actually wrote it out so I could not,
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, and Scott, I'm just sorry, as I go through this, I was obviously channeling you or you were channeling me earlier. So good evening, Heather Crawford, 553 Summer Hill Road. I've lived in Madison since 1996. I'm a lifelong resident of Connecticut, lover of the outdoors, avid gardener, and spent 2 decades at the University of Connecticut, obtaining a master's in marine ecology, then working 15 years with the Sea Grant program, and I happen to be the chair of your Conservation Commission. I've been with the commission since it was formed in 2006, and from the beginning, my somewhat joking response went to the question of, so what does your commission do anyway, was, we're Madison's Lorax, we speak for the trees. And tonight, that's no joke. And you've already had comments, so I'm just gonna be repeating some of it, but trees provide a vast interconnected collection of benefits to the atmosphere, the ecosystem we inhabit, and the physical and mental health of humans. The larger a tree, the more carbon dioxide it can sequester, the more shade it can provide, and the more individuals of multiple species it will provide food and shelter for. Trees are now known to communicate chemically with each other and with the other organisms around them, and generally to be healthier when growing in interconnection with other trees. Yet, we as humans and or property owners generally look at a tree as an individual and decide it's a danger or it's an obstruction to something that we want to do on our property. I can still remember in 1987 when my housemate, this may seem like a digression, but it's not. My housemate came home from a research cruise on Long Island Sound and told me they'd taken numerous deep water samples where they had found dissolved oxygen readings of 0. And this was the first time this had ever been documented in Long Island Sound. This finding led to a massive increase in research, the identification of excessive nitrogen as the culprit in summertime depletion of oxygen in the deep waters of the Sound, and the creation of the federally funded Long Island Sound Study. Initial efforts on removing nitrogen from the went to sewage treatment plants, but little improvement was noted. Further investigation found that non-point source pollution, also known as polluted runoff, from a variety of sources ranging from lawn fertilizers to auto emissions to animal feces, was sending as much or even more nitrogen into the Sound than the sewage treatment plants. My time with the Connecticut Sea Grant program was spent developing educational programs for homeowners on how to reduce their impacts on Long Island Sound through thoughtful household and yard care practices. I also helped create and provide the NEMO program, which is non-point education for municipal officials, which I hope some of you have at least heard of, to educate towns on the importance of proper land use planning to reduce polluted runoff and improve municipal resilience, although we didn't actually use that phrase at that time. The state was providing model regulations and passing legislation, but it was and still is something that had to be actively controlled at the local level. And I promise, this all has something to do with managing trees in Madison. When doing programs to reduce polluted runoff, the initial property owner response was often, seriously, how much difference could me using fertilizer on my lawn make in the big picture? But when one lawn is multiplied by 9,000 or by 90,000 or by the 9 million lawns in the Connecticut River watershed, the pollutants and their impacts become serious. Likewise, the idea that what difference is taking down this one tree make has led to the loss of tree canopy by a death of 1,000 cuts. Another way to think about trees and their place in the community is that trees are so long-lived that they were and are around for much longer than the typical property owner. and they provide the long-term benefits to the environment and to the community. They should therefore be considered the community members, not necessarily that they may actually, should actually possibly have more standing than the property owner. Because they're going to be there before them, they're going to be there after them. Why should the desire for more lawn space or maybe a bigger pool be more important than the production of oxygen, the reduction of carbon dioxide levels, providing food and shelter for dozens of species, the prevention of erosion and polluted runoff, and the many other benefits that trees provide? Changing our point of view can be difficult, and changing habits can be frustrating in the short term, but it can be done, and the environmental and quality of life benefits to our community will be significant. No one thought the first bottle bill was going to make a difference, but it's a lot harder to find beach glass these days because people are recycling instead of throwing their bottles at the rocks. And look at the success of our own plastic bag ban. There's a lot less bags flying around in the tops of trees these days. Education will be critical to any effort to improve the protection of trees and protect the tree canopy of Madison. And the Conservation Commission plans to be an active participant in the education effort. But education doesn't work without the regulation to provide the standards and the enforcement. A lot of work has gone into what you heard tonight, and there may be things you disagree with. There may be kinks that need to be straightened out. But the sooner we start actively protecting trees in Madison, the sooner we can see the positive impacts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have one other hand raised.
Walter.
From the Coastal Resiliency Commission, welcome. You endured this meeting, so you deserve a speaking spot, so.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, Walter Welsh, 14 Grove Avenue, Madison. I just joined tonight to see really what the Board of Selectmen does for a living. And knew you were going to get to the Resiliency Board vote at some point. That's really why I wanted to listen. And I learned a lot. And I just thank you for all you do in the Board of Selectmen. Sometimes I don't see a whole meeting. This is pretty impressive stuff. So thank you all very much.
Thank
Walter.
you. Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you for all your hard work on the Resiliency Committee. So
Right.
you
Have a
your
good evening, right?
charge. We just have to approve it after the public hearing. Okay?
Okay.
Great. All right, thank you. All right, I guess with that, hearing no further objections, please adjourn.
Oh, well.